Faulkner's Dream Catch Me on 720 ABC Perth. Good morning, if you're just joining us. Now, it's perfect timing to be speaking to my big interview today, with home birth being a hotly debated item in local media this week. Dave Mountain, president of the WA branch of the AMA, last week spoke out against the state-funded community midwifery programme, which allows women in the Perth metro area to have home births. What followed was a bit of argy-bargy, with a letter to the editor from a prominent WA obstetrician backing Dave Mountain's views, and a positive opinion piece from Julie Hoskin in Tuesday's paper. Add to that, Home Birth Week begins on Monday. Great timing. My guest is Dr Ralph Hickling, a now retired Perth-based obstetrician who's just written a book called Childbirth Today, Too Many Caesars, Not Enough Joy. Good morning.
Good morning, James.
I want to ask you first why it is such an emotive topic, and it gets people really riled, doesn't it?
Well, it's a cultural thing, and I think people are objecting to the culture that we are acquired. In our culture, pregnancy is treated as a disease and childbirth as an operation to cure the disease. And that's all wrong. That's a very misguided way of thinking of pregnancy. There's far more to it than that. And childbirth is an experience in everyone's lives, which should be much more full than the experience which we give it in our culture.
But the medical profession, who insist that it's far safer to have birthing done in hospital, they're only doing it for all the right reasons.
Well, no, the medical profession is doctors. Now, doctors' business is to treat disease, and pregnancy is not a disease. It should be looked after by someone else. It has dangers which need to be watched carefully, but as a individual function, childbirth should not be under the immediate care of doctors. They don't do it as well as midwives would. It should be a community business managed by the community, represented by midwives, and that should be the basis for maternity care, not treated as a disease.
I was talking about the article from Julie Hoskin in Tuesday's paper, and she talks in that article about how one of the ladies in one of these groups said that she was going to go for the home birth situation and in a birthing pool at home, and everyone looked and thought, how strange, how ridiculous. And of course it's not part of the everyday psyche, is it?
No, it isn't. It's a very good option. It's one that needs careful thought. But I haven't seen any births in water, actually, but I've seen plenty of births at home. And the scene there, the attitude of the woman, of the family, is really much more positive. And I'm sure that this does help labour.
Why?
Because it promotes the production of endorphins in the body. Endorphins are a sort of natural version of the painkillers which are otherwise given pharmaceutically, and this gives a much better way of enabling the body to function and the uterus to function and birth to proceed.
But equally, at home, many things can go wrong. It's a risky business, childbirth.
Well, the risks are carefully controlled, and it's a question of priorities. I mean, no facility, no doctors, no professors can say to a woman, if you have your baby with me and by the method that I promote, I can guarantee you a safe, healthy birth. It can't be done. There is always a risk. It can be minimised, okay, but it cannot be eliminated, and it's a trade-off for what you lose by going for the medical option all the time, and what you gain by the much more positive experience as you get in a community birth, and in particular in a home birth.
We'll talk about that in just a second. Dr Michael Gannon from Subiaco wrote an interesting letter to the paper through the week, and he was saying the most dangerous time in a child's life is at birth and shortly after. Babies born in hospital enjoy the expertise of not only midwives and obstetricians, but paediatricians as well. When it's a home birth, you don't get that full complement, do you? Well,
I think it's an overpitch. I mean, you don't need all of those. They're needed in a very small percentage of births, and the facilities provided at home are good, and the extra risk is very difficult to measure, and there are lots of things about the fulfilment and satisfaction of a birth which are lost by having too much attention to them.
We have a pretty good track record in Australia. Australian women enjoy the second lowest mortality rate in the world behind Norway, and that's because I think very few home births take place, so that is out of the equation, or are there other reasons why it's so successful?
Oh, I think there are other reasons. I mean, the statistics like they are can be very biased. I mean, you can put it this way. I presented the statistics of the community midwifery program in 2005 when they'd just done 1,000 births, and the perinatal mortality, which you inevitably have, was about 12 or 11. Anyway, it was that stage. In a hospital birth, you can bring it down to about 8. So that's what you can reasonably say, that if you have the baby in hospital, the risk of losing the baby is fractionally less than 1%. Mm-hmm. If you have it at home, it's fractionally more than 1%.
Okay. Just on the subject, therefore, of why do it at home, why put any risk, into the equation? And I'm not saying, it isn't without risk, but why is there a desire by some ladies to have the whole experience at home?
Well, I think control is the key word. If a woman goes into a hospital or into any other setting, she's no longer in control, in particular in hospital, but any other setting like a birth centre, she's not wholly in control. At home, she is in complete control, and the people who attend her are her guests, and that makes a big difference to the way she thinks. And labour is very much a psychosomatic process,
right,
which means that the thoughts in the mind affect the performance of the body, and you get a lot of gain that way.
Yeah, I was just talking about that article that Julie wrote, and she was saying how the reason why this lady chose to have the home birth second time around, because this was a second child, was the first one was just a long, protracted, painful experience, and she felt that after 20 hours of labour, there was some distancing, and it took a long time for that bond to take place between mother and child. And is that sort of implications of some bad experience on a psychological level?
Well, I think there certainly is a factor along those lines. It's if a woman is disappointed in the manner of her birth, it does tend to give rise to sort of baby blues and sometimes postnatal depression.
What about the clinical environment? Any negative effects on the child of being born in a clinical environment? For example, caesars, and we talked about the amount of caesarean sections take place, or using a spinal block or something like that.
Well, caesar's got problems of its own. For example, a baby benefits in a normal birth from the squeezing effect that he gets from the passage through the birth canal. It doesn't get that in a caesar.
Why is that important?
Well, it does give a small increase in hyaline membrane disease, which is a disease which is the result of a lack of surfactant, which is normally remedied in a normal birth, is affected. It's a small effect, but it is there. The other big danger about caesars, which is emerging, is that in a subsequent pregnancy, following a caesarean section, there's a raised incidence of morbidly adherent placenta accreta. This can be very dangerous.
I look at the stats, and I don't know exactly what the current figures are, but caesareans are certainly pretty well up there in terms of number and frequency. It seems to be increasing. Is that because of the litigious world we live in?
It's for several reasons, one of which is that women are just opting for it. So increasingly women are saying, I don't want to go through labour. There's a new word, tocophobia, fear of labour. Some just for social convenience want to have the baby
on a certain day, certain time,
and the timing does affect it.
Lock it into the diary and you can get on with life again.
That's the sort of thing. Well, if a woman wants to do that, I wouldn't interfere with her right to do so.
Yep.
But I think a woman also has the right to have her baby at home, have it in water, whatever she chooses that way.
And in your experience, Ralph, you've spoken and dealt with many childbirth situations. What do you see as a result of giving more choice to the lady and letting them choose where they want to have their baby?
I think the effect on the morale, on the sort of attitude to the birth, the attitude to the baby, the attitude, the well-being of her family, and the sort of general thought process after the birth is very much improved. I've been quite convinced of that.
It's amazing. You look at the stats, 30% of women in Holland are born at home. Sorry, the babies are born at home.
Yes, these statistics are changing. It is increasing. At one time, it was much lower than 30% that had the baby at home. But certainly Holland is one place where they have always been keen on home birth, and they still are. And that's because of the quality of the midwives you talked about at the beginning, the importance of midwives. Yes. They don't get a good press, do they? You know, that they do such a vital job. And yet we often talked about the doctors or the paediatricians or obstetricians. It's the midwives that
more often than not, are doing all the hard work.
Well, the trouble is that a midwife, nowadays, the profession of midwifery has been taken on as a specialist branch of the nursing profession. And nurses traditionally carry out doctor's orders. They can't, well, theoretically anyway, they can't act on their own initiative. They've got to do what the doctor says. Now, a midwife should be quite different from that. In Holland, she is. She's an independent practitioner. Okay, she should have ready access to an obstetrician, but she should have the primary care.
Many midwives love the idea of being at home and helping the mum. Others are very worried about it. We've got a text here from Patty, said childbirth's naturally dangerous. I have 2 midwife friends that are against it because of the risk. So you have this sort of split there as well, don't you?
Yes, you do. It depends on a lot of things, including how close facilities are. I mean, how long would it take to get an ambulance to the site and so on. But they are worth exploring, and I think that generally, in good conditions, it's a very realistic option.
Just finally, you have the book out called Childbirth Today, Too Many Caesars, Not Enough Joy.
Right. What
do you mean by not enough joy?
Well, it was a short phrase. I mean, to go on there, I wanted something pithy, and also joy is only 3 letters. Fulfillment might have been a better word, but it would have occupied more space, so that I said joy.
Joy. Well, it's good. It's a good title, and it's a book that has been self-published, so it's not available in the bookshops. If anyone's interested in reading the book Childbirth Today, Too Many Caesars, Not Enough Joy by Dr Ralph Hickling, if you just contact us here on Saturday Breakfast.
Dibbock's at Garden City are carrying it. So that
okay. Oh, that's good. So, if you want it as well, you can contact us and we'll tell you where else you can get hold of it. Thanks for coming in, and thanks for talking to it, and especially since it was good timing with 25th of this month being the start of what is it? The start of Home Birth Week.
Yes,
okay,
that's right. Yes.
Perfect timing, and thank you for at least let's debating that part of the argument. It's one of those ones that people will come down on one side or the other, and we don't often hear the arguments pro or for.
Thank you, James.
Nice to talk to you, Dr. Ralph Hickling on 7:20 ABC Perth. It's 13 minutes to 9. Got some live music in just a moment.